Hi, this is Darren Mangum, securities lawyer with Mangum Associates, and I'm here with Bryson Blaylock.
Happy to be here. How are you doing, Darren?
Happy Friday. You have a good week?
I did. Yeah,
Awesome.
Weather's finally cleared up. Not as much smoke here in Utah.
It has cleared up. If we had more time, we would turn the camera around and show you the view here. But yeah, we're here in our Salt Lake City office. I thought we'd jump on YouTube and talk about a few items today. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today we're addressing a few more questions that we get from a lot of our clients, or people that phone in and want to know about private placement memorandums or PPMs. They want to know what's included, which documents they need to have ready, or which documents we do for them. So Darren, that's what we want to know. What exactly is included in a PPM?
Yeah, of course. So, and what we thought we would do is we just pull up and go through a sample PPM, so you get people get an idea of what's all in it. And what we'll do is after we edit this video, we'll put in the description below. We'll put basically an outline of like a sample table of contents, what all is in the PPM, and then also we'll also send you. We'll also include a link to a Dropbox folder that has a bunch of sample PPMs that you can take a look at that we've done. We've been practicing over 23 years, and it's we've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of PPMs and of different types of industries, and but that's a kind of a good sampling of different PPMs that we've done. So I think that would be helpful. And as always, if this content's helpful for you, feel free to like or subscribe or share this with people that you know that are raising capital. Anyway, we've always felt that the better educated client is, the better client they are. They just know what's going on, right?
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, what we did. This is a. I was before the video. I was talking to Bryson back in the old days. We would actually physically print hundreds and hundreds of these PPMs, and usually they print out about, they average about 100 to 120 pages, everything included, all together. And thankfully, hopefully, we've saved some trees by not doing that anymore.
We don't have a library of PPMs on the wall anymore.
Oh no, the file cabinets are gone. The bookshelves full of PPMs. We still have them, but all electronically. Thankfully, it saves some room.
A couple of trees.
Yeah, so I instead of going through a physical PPM, we thought this is a sample PPM that we did. I don't know if you can see that, but we did this probably 10, 15 years ago. So it's this is a real estate related assisted living PPM, and what I thought we would do is, and you probably can't not be able to see this, but we're just going to go through the table of contents that would typically be in a PPM, and so just sort of as an outline. And what are people? You were saying the other day, people ask what's all included, right?
Yeah, I think the most common questions we get are about the operating agreement, and then they also want to know about subscription documents. Financial statements are another hot topic.
Yeah.
And then just other general questions about whether, is it all inclusive what we offer, or do we kind of just piece it together?
Yeah.
Questions like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a great question. What you don't want is somebody like, oh well, here's your PPM, but now you have to go somewhere else to get your operating agreement or your subscription agreement or different things like that. So the answer is no. You can we're a one-stop shop. We do all of that, right? When it comes to structuring the entities, when it comes to drafting the operating agreement or the subscription documents and the full PPM. So full PPM is not just the disclosures, but it's also all the exhibits, and we can go through that as we kind of go through it. But the exhibits are essentially, they are an essential part of the PPM, and that's why they're included. And so As a general rule, when you're offering securities or investments to investors, you need to provide full and fair disclosure of all the material facts and information that an investor should know or needs to know before they make an investment decision, right? And so that's what the PPM does. It goes through all of those various material facts, at least what the SEC deems to be important and material, right? So yeah, the first part of the PPM, we're just going to go through this really briefly go through this sample table of contents, which will again provide you a link to below, or we'll list it in the description below. But typically, the first things are you probably saw that on the cover page. Basically, basic information: who the issuer is or the company, and contact information for the company is usually on the cover page of the PPM. Plus standard disclosure. Even before you get to the table of contents, they're required to have standard disclosure items. And people, it's funny, people that hadn't seen a PPM for the first time, it's like they're sometimes a little shocked, saying, what are you trying to scare my investors? Are you trying to scare them away? And it's like, well, kind of, yeah. I mean, the SEC wants them to be on notice that, hey, this is not a bank. It's not like you're putting the money in the bank. It's not FDIC insured. It's not the SEC and like in a private placement. They haven't reviewed the documents, and so you can't really. So they just want to standard notices that there is risk involved, right? Which you think most investors would know that going in, but it just makes sure that, hey, there's risk here, right?
Okay.
So I tell, it's basically saying, hey, don't put your life savings into this or whatever. But anyway, but yeah, so that the first part of the PPM has those sort of standard disclosures that you'd see. Really, if you look at any sort of prospectus, like a mutual fund prospectus or any kind of IPO, they have similar language, right? That says, hey, there's risk here, right? So we have some disclosures right off the bat, and also state notices, depending on what state or jurisdiction. If you're doing international investments, taking international money, we include. Especially a lot of like international type offerings, we'll have sometimes the first 20 pages are all disclosures of all the different countries around the world, or at least in the U.S. At least all the states that that the offering, different states require different notices, right? So we include all those. Just going through the table of contents. Obviously, that's what. So then there's the right after the table of contents, there's what we call the principal features or the term sheet.
Okay.
When we say term sheet, it's basically a summary of the offering. Sometimes we have it called summary of the offering, where it just basically hits all the highlights of the offering, just the key considerations, and sometimes clients will use that section of the PPM as an executive summary to gauge interest from investors, right? It just basically says, hey, this isn't the full PPM, this is basically a summary, and what it does is it allows the investor just to sort of, instead of having to read through all 100 pages, they can go through maybe 2 or 3 pages and really get the gist of it.
So the term sheet really gives you a snapshot of the offering and what they're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly right. And so that's oftentimes when we start working on the PPM with a client, we'll focus on the term sheet first, because that sort of gives a great outline as to what we want to offer, like the price per share, or maybe if it's a debt offering, what are the terms of the note. Just summary. It summarizes the offering, and then again, like I said, some clients use that as as sort of a introduction to the offering to investors, because obviously if they read the 1 or 2 page term sheet or executive summary and they're not interested, well, they don't need to have the full PPM at that point. They just say, well, it's not for me, I'm not interested in this, right? Whereas if they say, yeah, this looks interesting, this looks good, then okay, well, now here's the full PPM with all the operating agreement, subscription documents,
And then the disclosures they can take a look at.
And
they
all the
have a
disclosures.
better idea of
Right.
what they're getting themselves into.
Exactly right. So, so that principal features or summary of the offering, it's sometimes called, is in there, and so then the next section is risk factors, right? And I've had some clients like, oh, do we really have to put the risk factors up front? Can we put them in the very back, or can we drop them out?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is no, because the whole point of the PPM is to, again, the risk factors are going to be, depending on the industry, somewhere in between, 5 to 15 to sometimes 20 pages of different risk factors that an investor really should be aware of. Like, if it's a real estate deal, it's going to have risk related to real estate. If it's a cryptocurrency, it's going to have risk factors related to that. If it's a pharmaceutical company, it's going to have risk factors related to that industry, right? And so those are all things that those are all things that need to be covered. That way they know what they're getting into, right? And that's really in the long run, it's really there to protect. If you're watching this and you're going to be an issuer of securities, or it's your company, it's really protecting you, because the investors can't come back later and say, well, I didn't know that there was a risk that there was going to be a pandemic. I didn't know that. Well, guess what? We're going to have a little a paragraph in there that says, hey, there could be a pandemic, which actually there is one right now, right? So, that's I don't know if we're socially distanced right now, but anyway.
I think it's
I think
really
we're
to
good.
benefit
You know what I'm saying.
You want to address the objection before it becomes a problem later on, and that's what you can do
Right.
with the risk.
Yeah, so that's the risk factors, and the SEC, best practices, they want to see that right up front, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that scares the investor away, then okay, well, then it's probably not for them, right? But really good luck trying to go find any sort of legitimate investment that doesn't. If whoever's selling the securities, if they're doing it right, they're going to disclose the risk factors related to the investment. It's not something you want to skim over. And part of that is again, we don't do heavy tax treatment, because tax effects of investment, they're always shifting and changing with the tax code, and so really we put in risk factors related to taxation that basically says, hey, look, maybe you should go talk to your own CPA about the tax effects, right? And again, depending on the offering, we also cover ERISA, which if they're putting in retirement funds, if they're putting in a self-directed IRA, for example, we'll have risk factors related to that, and then we'll have usually a cautionary note regarding forward-looking statements saying, hey, look, because we say we might, or we will, or we expect to, blah, blah, blah. Those are all what we call forward-looking statements that may or may not pan out, right? May or may not be true, right? And just because we say we believe, or we think this is going to happen, or we want this to happen, or then those are all, you're putting them on notice that, what company doesn't have aspirations that they hope are going to come true, but then again, they may not, right? And so the whole point of any sort of legal disclosure is to make sure that there's no guarantees, right? So that's we have language that covers that, and then we jump into the actual sort of meat of the offering, which is the business plan section. That's a significant section, and instead of just attaching a business plan on the back, because some business plans, they're a little over. We receive them and we look at them, but they're a little over the top, rose-colored glasses, and so we sort of have to temper it and modify it to some extent, just to keep keep things in check, right? Because the way that's portrayed or written, sometimes business plans go a little over the top and saying, we're going to save the world, and cure everybody of cancer and all this stuff. Whereas, okay, well, maybe we need to temper that a little bit. So we help in that drafting process. But that's a really key section, is that business plan.
What do you think are the most important things then to include in your business plan that should be included in the PPM? If there's one or two things that are a must.
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, what are you going to, obviously, what are you going to be doing with the money? Who's running the show, and certainly, you want to make a case of why, why us, right? Why this project, or why, what's the economic, what's going on in that particular industry? Like if it's real estate, if you're doing real estate development in Dallas or Atlanta or wherever, let's talk about Atlanta. Why is that a hot area right now, or why is there opportunity there? Kind of some market. You want some market overview of to give a client or give an investor what a little bit of perspective, right? And then obviously, and some of the other sections of the PPM are are usually taken out of the business plan, but we put them in the PPM in different sections so they're easy to reference and easy to find. Some of those are, what's the organization of the company? Who's the CEO, or who's the principal officer? What are some key personnel that may be critical to the business? And also maybe what kind of track record do you have? What kind of prior activities do you have? Is this your first rodeo, or are you brand new, right? And obviously part of that is also, how are you going to use the money, right? Outline, if we're raising, $5 million or $10 million, this is how we expect to break it down. We always like to draft some kind of flexible language in there to say, this could change, right? You want to have the flexibility to, not go invest in something totally different. Like, if you say, hey, we're raising it for real estate, and then you go invest in cryptocurrency, right? That's not good, right? But if you say, hey, we may allocate this money differently than what we think, and so you want some language in there to that effect. But anyway, that's like the use of proceeds. And then there's some other key things like conflicts of interest. If my brother's working for me, or my wife is my wife's our CFO, or things like that could give rise to conflicts of interest. We want to disclose those items, right? So that's another section. Also, legal proceedings. If there's anything, maybe there was a bankruptcy you had in the past, or maybe you're a felon. Maybe had some securities infractions. Things of like, in most cases, clients don't have things that were so serious that it disqualifies them from. There's some cases where people are disqualified from ever raising money again. They were just super bad. The security, the SEC banned them from ever raising money again. Okay, well then it's going to be a challenge, right, to address that. But in most cases, it's like, well, look, I've never been banned from ever raising money again, but I have maybe some historical legal things that I want to make sure are disclosed. That way investors don't come back and say, hey, I didn't know you filed bankruptcy before, or I didn't know you had a felony on your record, or things like that, right? That may not preclude you from raising money, but it's certainly would be deemed a material disclosure fact that you would want to make sure is out there. When I say out there, in the PPM, and that way, again, it can't be used against you later, right?
Okay. I've had a lot of people ask me, they've had a bad deal in the past, or they have maybe some kind of felony they've been convicted of. Is there a list that the SEC puts out that certain things that you have to disclose, or is it good faith? Where would you find that? Would you find it on SEC.gov?
There's certainly depending on the like if you're offering under exemptions from registration, and I've got some past videos that talk about that. But as far as like what is a bad actor, right? The bad actor means, well, if you're a bad actor, it means that prior to September 23rd of 2013, that or I guess since that date, you've had some sort of a securities infractions, right? Like you've had a cease and desist, you've had securities related administrative proceedings against you, right? Then sometimes that may preclude you from actually relying upon, like say, Regulation D, for example. There may be other exemptions that you say, well, okay, I can't do Regulation D, but I might be okay doing some other exemptions, and we could talk about that in another video. But yeah, so but the general rule is, hey, if it's, again, it is sort of open ended. It's like, hey, would it be deemed important or material, to an investor to want to know this? Then you should disclose it, right? Regardless of whether you're actually, specifically required to or not. It's better to err on the side of caution and say, you know what, I'm going to disclose it, even though that thing, whatever that event is, may have happened before September 23rd, 2013. That's okay, but just disclose it. Again, it's not. I mean, it's so long ago now. It's like, it's not going to affect the terms of the deal. Right?
In the mind of an investor, it'd probably be better to find out while reading.
Right.
To find out later on about.
And if that one thing that happened 20 years ago, if that's going to spook them, okay, well, great. Better to spook them in now and let them go, rather than bring them in and then now they're a thorn in your side and now all this stuff, right? So, yeah, some investors you just got to let them go, right? You can't just, yeah. Anyway. So then, a couple other sections of the PPM, we've got, you usually have maybe general definitions, or where they can, some documents you can't really all, if there's all these material agreements like patents or key contracts, that, you don't have to include all those copies in the PPM, but you might say, hey, these are available, available upon request. In some cases, you might a non-disclosure document needs to be signed because there may be sensitive information. So, so basically, there may be documents that are referenced but not included in the PPM, right? So that's kind of again, we'll put this in the description below. But the last section we'll talk about is the exhibit section, which is exhibit section is sort of key important documents. Usually, when you're doing like an equity offering, you're going to have the operating agreement, a copy of the operating agreement, your financial statements, and then your subscription documents. And subscription documents meaning the actual paperwork that the investor fills out and sends back to you when they invest, along with their funds, right? And so those are key, and those are all something we include. I mean, again, I've seen some law firms that are like, oh yeah, we'll do the PPM, but you go get your own subscription agreement. And I'm like, we do all of that. All that's all included in the same document in the final version of PPM. So all that's included. And like it depends on the offering too. Like if you're doing a cryptocurrency offering, you're not obviously going to have an operating agreement, but you're going to have a white paper that describes the tokens and all of that. If you're doing a debt offering, you're not going to have an operating agreement per se, but you may have, a copy, obviously a copy of the promissory note or the bond or whatever instrument that you're getting them to subscribe to, right? So depending on the nature of the offering, those may change, but those are all really critical pieces of the PPM, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of hopefully a good overview of what all is included,
Yeah, that was great. I think the main sections, or the biggest sections, seem to be one, the term sheet, which really gives the investor a snapshot of the offering, and then also the business plan,
right? And
then later on in the document would be the operating agreement, subscription docs, and just the whole exhibit section. Is that right?
Exactly right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So all told, I mean, all that together, again, it's usually you're looking about we'll deliver both in Word format and a PDF. It's usually around 100 to 120 pages on average, but all that's all included. And honestly, most investors, they get the PPM, but most of the time they're going to be just keen in on that summary of the offering that we talked about, and then okay, great, and then they'll go to the subscription documents But at least you've done your job in giving them disclosure. And I like to make the analogy of like, when you buy insurance, like a car insurance, you buy a car insurance policy. Most of the time you're going off of what the agent is telling you. Okay, this is all what's included. Usually it's like a summary, and then you're like, okay, that sounds great. And then here's the actual policy, But again, you should. I mean, as lawyers, we would tell you, yes, please read all of it. And if you don't understand it, go find a lawyer to help explain it to you. But at least, again, as a practical matter, a lot of investors don't actually read the PPM, even though they really should. But it's there just making sure that everything's disclosed, right? So anyway, yeah.
That's great.
Anyway, hopefully that's a good overview.
If you guys have any
Yeah.
questions, comment below. We're more than happy to take your phone calls, take your questions, and
Yeah.
do our best to answer them and help you out.
Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.